Right, I don't have a joke, but I do have some information to share that'll bring me joy. That next week, Saturday, is Rex's birthday. So send him a lot of messages and emails and texts and calls. He absolutely hates that. So do that for me. That'd be good. But the reason I'm saying that is because we actually have men's retreat next week. And if you haven't signed up, please sign up. You can see Logan. Where's Logan? He's somewhere, yeah. Logan, put your hand up. Nope, don't see him. All right, he's somewhere in the building. But yeah, see Logan if you want to sign up. And it starts Friday at 7 o'clock in the evening. So hopefully we'll see you there. So, Abba Father is our lesson today. Where this came from, and I'm going to tell you, about 2 and a bit months ago, I'm at home, I'm studying in the study, I am working on lessons, I have my back towards the door, and my 1-year-old son, all right, I haven't taught him this, no one's taught him this, but my 1-year-old son, he busts through the door. It sounds like that, I kid you not, it felt like he just kicked the door, because I got my back towards the door, so all I hear is this massive bang. So I'm like, all right, this is going to be good. And as he steps into the room, I just feel the energy come in with him, this confidence, this determination, and I just know something's about to happen. And kicks the door and he goes, "Hey, Keegan." Oh, what? Calls me Keegan. Now, the boy and the adventurer inside of me thinks this is awesome. So I slowly turn around, like, but the father in me, something overrides that boyish fun in me. The father in me says, "Come again?" And he looks at me and I said, "Who am I?" He says, "Daddy." I was like, all right, cool, we're good, right? It's so funny. But that got me thinking. I want to explore this idea of father. What was inside of me that overrode the fun part? And I wanted to dive into that relationship, the connection. I don't want to lose this. You're my boy. Who am I? Daddy. I love that, right? So yeah, it's kind of a joke now. But I want to give you this analogy, and hopefully you'll understand where I'm going with this. So on the left there, that's an outlet. Scott will recognize it. That's an outlet in South Africa. We call it a plug, right? On the right's the American outlet. Do you notice the difference there? You notice the fun and exciting times you can have on the left-hand side? Because when you're a kid, your finger can easily go into that hole. Right now, let me just say, South Africa was a great country. I mean, the economy was great. We had some really intelligent people. Our military was a force to be reckoned with. I mean, even the rand was stronger than the dollar at one point. They were a really good country. Saying all that, this is one of the dumbest things I've ever seen, right? So how do you think my childhood sounded growing up? Don't put your finger in the plug. Don't, Keegan, back off. Right? That's like my mother to a T. And my dad, no, don't. And as a young kid, I didn't know any better. Obviously now I'm like, well, let's put a pen in there. Let's see what happens. No, don't do that. But the part of me didn't understand. I didn't understand the intricate workings of the electrical system. I still don't. Right? If I look at all that, I'm like, okay, well, yeah, it seems pretty dangerous. But as a young kid, as an infant, I had no idea. All I knew is that my parents were mean. So I came up with this idea that as an infant, there's this lack of knowledge. So instead of my parents explaining all of this, the answer is simply, don't. Because I would bet they don't even understand that. But don't, right? And then as I get older, there's an explanation that starts to happen between my mother and I, my father and I, and there's this, seems like it's a respectful thing that they're sitting down and trying to explain why they're doing something that way. And then as I become an adult, now I look back and go, oh wow, my parents actually loved me. As an infant, I thought, you're so mean. Why don't you let me have fun? But now I look back and I'm going to do the same thing to Callum. Don't put your finger in there. But now I understand that my parents love me. My father loves me. My mother loves me. Right? And so I start to see this comparison happening in the Old Testament, this lack of knowledge. Then we see Jesus come, and there's this beautiful explanation that occurs. And then we see the New Testament, and now we're all like, wow, we're actually loved. So let's get into that. So the first point I had was the Father's justice. Justice is getting what you deserve. Therefore, the Lord waits to be gracious to you, and therefore he exalts himself to show mercy to you. For the Lord is a God of justice. Blessed are all those who wait for him. Isaiah 30:18. So then I had 3 points I've got 3 points and 3 points under the 3 points, right? So follow with me. The first one I had there was the Father's assertion. Now this is interesting to me because when I researched the word Father, it only comes up 15 times in the Old Testament. That's if you include the poetic metaphor titles that it's referring to. 15 times, which blew my mind, referring to God, right? And when you talk about Father in that capacity, it's not talking about the Father that we think about right now, this connection. It's talking about Father, the King. It refers to him as the head of the household, the owner, that he has legal rights. It talks about the moral lawgiver in that context, the Redeemer, the Creator, the Patriarch. In other words, this idea that I made you, so I own you. I rescued you from Egypt. I own you. And that's why we see scriptures like Exodus 4:22, then you shall say to Pharaoh, thus says the Lord, Israel is my firstborn. This idea that the word Father wasn't just it's not just a casual way of speaking. It was pointing to the highest authority in the universe. So it's pointing. And it blew my mind, right? Only 15 times. All right? The other idea is that, okay, Abraham and Isaac and Jacob are all dead, the patriarchs. So we're going to point to God. That makes sense? That the Father of everything. The best verse to explain that I found was, then you shall say to Pharaoh, thus says the Lord, Israel is my firstborn. This idea that access was not an individual thing. It was through the tribe. So he's the owner, the originator, the king, right? The second point that I had there, the Father's holiness. Now I want you to feel this point, because this is the feeling we get when we're young, we're infant. That there's this distance between mom and dad and me. They don't understand me, and clearly, I don't understand them. And you feel this distance. And so, because God is a holy Father, sin created this barrier. You couldn't just walk up and chat and talk to God. You needed to go through a priest. The Father was behind a curtain because his justice couldn't tolerate the wages of the people's sin. But also, the curtain is not just to keep God in, but to protect the people from the weight of the justice they couldn't survive. So we have this distance. And you know how I interpret this distance? Back to that plug analogy, the outlet analogy. Why, Mom? Because I said so. I'm in charge. Right, so we see God's justice. He's asserting, I like the way this lays out as well. He's asserting his holiness and then his obligation. And under that holiness, Leviticus 16:2, and the Lord said to Moses, tell Aaron, your brother, not to come at any time into the holy place inside the veil, before the mercy seat that is on the ark, so that he may not die, for I will appear in the cloud over the mercy seat. You feel that distance. And the third point under this one is the Father's obligation. He's the judge, the authority. Fatherhood meant authority. To call him father was to acknowledge him as the one who set the rules of the house. Disobedience wasn't just a mistake, it was a legal breach of contract. The patriarch of all human life, the rock of the family, firm and immovable. If a rock falls on you, it crushes you. But if you stand on the rock, you're secure. That's the idea. So under this, the justice, you have God asserting who he is, his holiness, trying to make you understand, right? There has to be this authority there, and then he's the judge. If you break the rules of the house, I got to do something about it. If you stick your finger in the plug, I'm gonna give you a whack on your behind, right? Are we still allowed to do that these days? I don't know. I got lots of those. Not only are you going to zap yourself and kill yourself, but there's discipline, right? And Dad doesn't want me to die, so he's going to discipline me so that I don't die. But I don't understand that yet. So I look to the Old Testament God, and I know people think this. They go, oh, God in the Old Testament, just a mean old God. Okay, let's keep exploring. I want to come back to that point. Second point, the Father's mercy. This is that explanation that I'm seeing in the analogy. Mercy is not getting what you deserve. Thank goodness. But God, being rich in mercy, because of the great love with which he loved us, even when we were dead in our trespasses, made us alive together with Christ. By grace you have been saved. It's Ephesians 2. The Father's reveal. This is where it starts to get interesting. That word my, when Jesus refers to God as my Father. Abba meaning this connection, this daddy, this papa. It's not this distant father that we've known in the Old Testament. It's, no, there's relationship here. There is so much love. We have a connection. My Father. So when Jesus spoke of God with such shocking familiarity, by using Abba, he claimed that God behind the temple curtain was Papa. To the Pharisees, this was blasphemy because it bypassed the priest. You know, the Pharisees weren't just mean guys, but they saw themselves as protectors of the Old Testament justice. So when Jesus is saying this, it's dangerous. It's offensive. And in a way, Jesus is playing with fire by saying this. Right? Offensive. You know, the gospel's offensive. Why is it offensive? Because I want to live my life this way. Don't tell me I'm not allowed to. That's how the world perceives it, right? And so Jesus is seen as blasphemous. Now, going back to that idea, the 15 times it's used in the Old Testament, right? We've explained that. Well, think about it this way. 15 times over 39 books, over thousands of years, only 15 times? You feel that distance, right? But when Jesus steps in, 160 plus times it's used just in the Gospels. 260 plus times throughout the New Testament, we see the word Father in the context of this loving dad figure. Right? So Jesus is bridging this gap. As you can see, we're slowly growing up, right? We were in the infant stage. We didn't really understand God. God says, don't do it. But now we're growing up. We're like, oh, hang on. Okay, there's an explanation happening now. I'm starting to kind of understand. That's where we're at. In John 5:18, it says, this is why the Jews were seeking all the more to kill him, because not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he was calling God his own Father, making himself equal with God. He shifted the word to like a primary name now, almost like the air we breathe. When I was a kid growing up in Benoni Church of Christ, there was a Scottish man named Tom King. I hate Scottish. And he'd get up and he'd pray. But when Uncle Tom would pray, He would say Father at the beginning of the sentence. He'd say Father at the end of the sentence. And he'd throw in a few more fathers in between that. So as a 7-year-old kid, and I think maybe Heath helped me on this one. I know this is bad, but I started counting the fathers, right? And I got over 50 once in one prayer. This is highlighting what I'm saying. Jesus has changed this idea of this distant father, and we cling to it as a name for him, as a relationship with him. It was a father's desire. Second point there. Jesus showed that the father wasn't just waiting for payment, he was waiting for a son. In the parable of the prodigal son, the father runs. Let me read that. Luke 15:20. And he arose and came to his father, but while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion and ran and embraced him and kissed him. This was scandalous in the Old Testament. This was an embarrassment for the patriarch to run. The point that Jesus is showing here that God is running to you and doesn't care about embarrassment. God, the Father, the creator of the universe, doesn't care what other people think about him or how it makes him look. I want my son. I'm running to him. This starts to change my understanding of the Old Testament mean God that we so often throw that out. This starts to make something different happen. The other side of it, a rebellious son could be brought before the elders in Deuteronomy chapter 21 and stoned. Now, I've thought about this. Most of our elders, they got shoulder problems, so we're okay, right? But the highlight here is the rebellious son. I mean, by law, the father could have put him out. Instead, he runs embarrassingly towards a rebellious son. This highlights the desire he has for us. So once again, these 3 points, God, the Father, is revealing his desire and his availability. Jesus taught his followers to pray, Our Father, effectively handing them the keys to the house. He bridged the gap by making the unique relationship with God our relationship with God. This is inclusive. Or read that scripture, Matthew 6:9. Pray then like this, Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. This inclusiveness of the person sitting next to you, no matter where you're from, what walk of life, what all our differences, we're all included. Our Father. You're my family. You're my brothers and sisters. Our Father. It's deep connection. Actually, proving that the curtain has been removed. Let me highlight that. The distance that we saw in the Old Testament, we felt God's holiness. We needed to understand and feel God's holiness. We needed that distance. We didn't like it. But now we start to understand, he is holy. And what he's slowly starting to do is beautiful and rescuing me. And so that distance is closing in. Our Father. And finally, the last point, big one. The Father's grace is getting what you don't deserve. And we start to see that love come in. In that infant stage, we don't understand the lack of knowledge. We've seen the explanation of Jesus. Okay, we're starting to get it. And now we're going to see the love in the New Testament. Start to understand that our parents, that God, our Father, our Abba, he loves us. So the Father's adoption. It's a legal change. The New Testament Father doesn't just feel love. He legally changes our status. We are moved from the wages of sin, which is death, to the inheritance of the Son, which is life, allowing us to cry out, Abba. Galatians 4:7. So you are no longer a slave, but a son. And if a son, then an heir through God. In the Roman world, an adopted son was legally chosen and could never be disowned. Let me say that again. In the Roman world, and I remember Paul's writing this, An adopted son was legally chosen and could never be disowned. A biological son could. So Paul adds this layer of security. The Father didn't just find us. He chose us. He paid our debts, and He signed it in blood. The Father's connection. That's that distance again being deleted between my Father, our Father. The Old Testament Father was in the temple. The New Testament lives in the child. This connection that we now have, this distance is deleted because the Holy Spirit cries out from within us. He is no longer distant, rather indwelling and only a whisper away. Grace is a legal standing. Let me say that again. Grace is a legal standing, not God ignoring our sin, but reclassifying us, not as pardoned criminals, but as heirs. Legally, our Father pays the debt. So in Romans 8:15 it says, for you did not receive the spirit of slavery to fall back into fear, but you have received the spirit of adoption as sons, by whom we cry, Abba, Father. I'll be honest, when I was baptized at 14, I did it out of fear. But now I stand here today with a better understanding of my Father and the love that we have now. The fear is not the same as what it is now. I have a healthier understanding. I have a better relationship with my Father, right, as I grow. And finally, the Father's ultimate love, the sacrifice. The greatest of these is love, is proven here. The Father doesn't demand we die for our sin. He sends the Son, who is one with Him, to die for us. 1 John 3:1. See what kind of love the Father has given to us, that we should be called children of God, and so we are. The reason why the world does not know us is that we did not know Him. Ultimate love, the sacrifice. I get it now. So we see God's justice, the Father's justice. He sets the holy standard. We needed that holy standard. We needed the don't to survive. We need His mercy, and so He absorbs the holy sentence. And I definitely need His grace. He gives the holy inheritance. And so in Hebrews 13:8, when it says, God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and forever, how can we turn around and say, well, God's this mean old God in the Old Testament? That's not the case. I see a loving, caring, sacrificial God, a Father who desperately wants us. But now I look back and I understand. I needed that. I needed to, because I was in my infant stage. I didn't know. Let me back it up. Go and do a study on God's wisdom, the manifold wisdom of God, and realize how small and insignificant you are standing next to His wisdom. You want to tell me you understand all that? I got no idea. The more I read, the more I'm like, I have no clue. So my point is, that distance that we thought was there was God actually setting the standard and trying to teach us, this is what needs to happen because this is who I am. I'm not just your father, your Abba. I'm your king. I am the judge. I am the authority. I'm the head of the household. I am everything, and I'm your dad. And I'm your papa. That connection. So this all culminates. Let me put this, I'll put it back later. This all culminates in the end. 2 Corinthians 5:21, for our sake, He made Him to be sin, who knew no sin, so that in Him we might become the righteousness of God. I think this is the pinnacle of the story. And I'm not necessarily saying the resurrection, but hear me out. I think the pinnacle of the story is the day of judgment. The celestial day of judgment, where we stand before God and He's up there on His throne with His gavel or whatever it might be, the King. And He looks down and He says, Keegan, my son, The wages of sin are death. And it's time to take your payment. And I'm crying out, Dad, no, please, I can't take it. I can't take that penalty. I can't take the death. I literally cannot take it. Please. He says, I'm sorry, my son. I'm the judge. I have to be just. Because if I'm not just, we have a world of chaos. Heaven would be chaotic. I have to be just. I have to be consistent. That's who I am. That's the holiness of me. I'm sorry, my son. You're guilty. Father, please, no. Dad, no. And then he steps off the bench, takes off his robe, and walks down and stands next to me and says, you're my son. I'll take it. I'll take it. I'll die for you. And 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 I'll die for you.